Welcome to Time with Grandpa and Grandma. We're glad you're here today. Today we're going to have a little bit different than what we have been doing. We're going to talk about a request that we had, and that was to talk about our horse shows and trail rides. I guess it was just basically trail rides, but we're going to incorporate the horse shows too into it. And we had the town that we lived in. We didn't live in town. We lived in the country. Both Grandma lived out in the country, and her dad farmed, and my dad farmed. But both of our dads had horses, and we were both members of the same saddle club as the Dumont Saddle Club that we were members of. So we would have every once a month we would have a trail ride, and where we would go, it would vary so much. It could be just around on a road. We'd go a few miles, ride to
Country roads.
country roads. Yeah, not main roads,
Gravel.
but country gravel roads that we would ride, and usually they were like dead roads that weren't used that much or maintained that much, but we'd be kind of off of the main heavy traffic that we'd have trail rides. And we would have, maybe there was 20, 25 members of our Dumont Saddle Club, and most of the people would ride on their horse, on the saddle. I have a horse saddled, and then we'd ride, and they had all kinds of horses, different breeds, and ponies. Some of the kids had little ponies that they would ride, but some had buggies that they would take, have a team that they would drive a wagon or a buggy. Cheryl's dad had a Amish buggy that he had bought that they did what. Tell them what you did to it.
Well, Dad took the black stuff off of it and he painted it red and put fringe around it. And at times, when they had Dumont days, they also drove it in the parade and kids could ride in it.
Mm-hmm.
It had 2 seats in it and then a little box on the back too. So we called it the trunk. So a lot of kids could crawl in it and he would give rides. And it was just kind of fun. Sometimes if my grandma and grandpa lived on the same farm that we did, so if cousins would come over, sometimes Dad would give rides, not even trail rides time, but give them rides on that too.
Then we would have usually a spring and fall, or no, at least a fall, not spring. Yes, we'd have a trail ride that we would join with other clubs, but it would be a ways away. It'd be like 60 to 80 miles away from where we lived, and it was in would be a big timber with hills. It was usually like on the border of where Iowa and Wisconsin or Illinois would meet. And McGregor, Iowa, is right by the Mississippi River, is where it was close to, where there'd be a lot of hills, and we would truck our horses there, put them on a semi, and take them over. Some of the families would have horse trailers, their own horse trailer that they would truck their own horse. But those that didn't would put them on the semi, and we'd take them over. Then we'd ride back in the timber, and that would be a long ride. It would take most of the day to ride on that trail ride. And there's what they call land there that is owned by the government. It's the Bureau of Land Management, BLM land. And I don't know if at that time, if it was called that, but that's what it is today. That's the kind of land it would be, and we'd get permission to ride on that land. And it would either be at McGregor or it'd be out west, western part of Iowa, a Boone Trail ride, which would be a little bit of drive. And I think I went once on the Boone Trail ride. That was usually an overnight trail ride. It was a 2-day. But the one at McGregor, Iowa, was a 1-day. So we would have that. for a trail ride. And then also the Dumont Saddle Club would have a horse show where we would invite, of course, other saddle clubs to come, and then we would have games that we would play. We had musical chairs that we played with our horses.
Put
And
like a gunny sack out
Yeah.
all different places and play music, and then
then when
you
the
know,
music stopped, you had to find an empty gunny sack, and then they would pull gunny sacks away, one or two every time. And so if those that didn't find a gunny sack, uh, they were out. And so they would get down to the last person on that. And I did win a ribbon on that one once that I know of, and that was at the Doherty Saddle Club had their horse show, and I got third place on that was musical chair. That's the only ribbon that I can remember of what the game was I played. But we would have those, and then we would have a ring race where there was little round rope rings on posts that were fastened with clothespin clips. And the thing that made that game hard was every time you'd hit a ring, it would snap, it would pop, and that would scare the horse. So the horse sometimes would veer off, and you couldn't keep him on the right path to go around on that ring race. And we would just make like a U shape run on that, and there would be like 6 rings. There'd be 3 on each side, and you just get 3 and then go around and get the other 3. And if you missed the ring, then you get points taken off of your time, but everything was timed. And with those, I won quite a few ribbons on those. I don't know if all of these were the first place ribbons were on the ring race, but I have a feeling that they probably were, because that was the race I usually got first place on, because my horse would not spook, would not get scared. But otherwise, we have other games that we played. We'd have I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are second place ribbons on different games. We would have flag races where you had to change the flags from a 5-gallon bucket on one end to another 5-gallon bucket on the other. You take one flag at a time. And again, that was all timed, how fast you could do it. And then, of course, we'd have the barrel race where you'd do a figure 8 on the barrels, or like a clover leaf on the barrels, and then come back, and that was timed also. And I don't know, like I said, I don't know what I don't have written on these, but these are all third place ribbons here that I have from my horse. And so I got first, second, and third, and then these are fifth place? Fourth place ribbons. The pink ones are fourth place ribbons. So those are the ribbons that I had saved, that I had. I think those are probably all the ribbons I ever got. And there's, I don't know how many there are here. I got...
when they would have these horse shows, I can remember they would have sodas in glass bottles, and then they would put them in a great big clean horse tank and have it full of ice and water. And you don't see those kind of bottles around much anymore.
So I got about 20 ribbons here of all the times of the horse shows that I went to and such. So we always had a good time at those. And then we'd have the parade in Dumont once a year that we would ride our horses. Our saddle club would ride horses, and we'd usually have a couple people that would carry the flags
Probably
in front.
the Iowa flag and
the Iowa and the United States flag. Yeah.
And then another thing that they did sometimes, did your folks ever do that ride on the Pony Express?
We never did that. That was that was across Iowa.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
you each saddle club could sign up if they wanted to do it,
right.
and you would ride so many miles. And what it was for, you were just to donate toward, like maybe it was polio
Yeah,
or the heart, to make a donation.
yeah. You would the person riding their horse for those miles that you'd sign up for, it would go all the way across Iowa, 400, 500 some miles. And different saddle clubs would sign up for that and go across. I never did ride on that, but anyway, they would carry a boot, and then along the way they would take people's donations. It was publicized, advertised in the papers and on radio and such, so they knew the route that the Pony Express would take, and then people would be there to put money in the boot and to take it on across Iowa. So that was another event that we had with our horses. So, um,
Now, did we tell them much about the trail rides?
no,
Um,
go ahead.
well, you tell 'em.
Yeah, the trail rides that we would go on, we always had a good time on them. We would ride so many miles. If it was through a timber, we would meet at different members' houses, and usually the farms would have some timber on them that you would ride through, and there'd be a path that you'd go through on the timber. Her dad had a big timber on his farm, and then there was a few other families that had timbers on their farm. We didn't have a timber, so if it met at our house, we would ride on the road, on the gravel roads. But you would ride a few miles, and then we would meet somewhere or stop somewhere and have a lunch, and then ride back with that. But all the families that were members of the trail ride, that were on the trail ride, would have their horses. They had the horse trailers that would take their horses to meet at that member's house and then ride from there. So, but like I say, once a year we'd have the McGregor Trail Ride or the Boone Trail Ride, where it was it was a all-day ride, and the Boone was a 2-day ride on that. So that was the extent of the trail rides, and we had little kids, we had adults, we had teens, all ages and all different size horses that went on it. So we had a lot of fun. It was a good time.
I can remember my little brothers even riding. They were maybe 5 and 7, and just it was fun to see them all saddled up, ready to go. They would do it a lot when we had it at our place through our timber. I don't know. Did they take the same trail, the cow trail that the cows always took?
Not always. Sometimes they had wider trails where a tractor or something would go, or a Jeep or something through the timber. Because a lot of times you would put your cows out in the timber to let them graze and keep the weeds down and such. So you would have a path through that. Sometimes that's the path we would take, but sometimes it was a regular, just a cow path that we would ride down.
The grandkids probably don't know what a cow path is. When you put the cows out in a pasture or in the timber, they always went on the same path. So there was just a little worn area, like this wide, that you could just trail through.
Usually you'd have a place where they, like a water tank, or a place where they had mineral or a salt block, that type of thing. And so when the cows, usually once or twice a day, they would go to water and to get water, so they would all single file on a little cow path, and it was always wore down, and they would follow that path every time to go to their water or to their mineral or salt or whatever you had. If you had a bale of hay or if you had some grain for them to eat on top of the pasture and the timber grazing that they would do, they would always follow that path, and that was the path a lot of times that the trail ride would go on through the timber. And but anyway,
when the cows come home to milk, they always came home on the same path too.
yeah, yeah. If you
amazing.
had milk cows, and they would come back on the or go out and come back on the same path
But
all the time.
I didn't ride on the trail rides except for when Dad took the buggy. I remember Marcy was just a little baby, and we went to this property where Dad had rented a timber, and you had to go on the gravel road to get to it, and it was down the lane to get to that field. It was on either side was plum trees, and it was blooming, and yet also little plums were starting to form. And so as we went down there, plums were bouncing off all over, and we were glad that Marcy had a little bonnet on so she wouldn't get hit in the face. And it was kind of fun. We felt like pioneers. I did anyway. So that was fun.
It was a good time with the families. Usually the whole family would be on the trail ride, and Mom and Dad, Mom too, had her horse that she would ride. My mom didn't ride, and your mom didn't ride.
And I didn't ride.
And
really.
you didn't ride that much. She would ride once in a while. Once in a while, I would go over on the weekends to her house.
Not the whole weekend.
On Sunday, not the whole weekend. On Sunday afternoon, I would ride. We lived about 6 miles away from each other, and so I would ride my horse over there to her house, and then we would ride the timber maybe, or whatever, and just visit or talk or whatever, and then I would have to get home to milk the cows. So we had to be home for that, but I would do that most after Sunday afternoons. I did that. So that's our.
And then another thing that happened in the summer is sometimes my dad would race chariot ponies at the county fairs. And
they would have 2-horse hitch chariots and 4-horse hitch chariots, 4 abreast. They would race, and then they had chuck wagon races also with that, and that's where they had an old chuck wagon, a covered wagon, and then they had a team of 6 horses, 2, 4, 6 horses, and then they had outriders, and then they had a course that they had to go around, and then come back, and the one first back was the winner on the chuck wagons. But the chariot races were a lot of fun too, and
I liked it better when it was just 2 horses because it wasn't as dangerous.
Yeah.
Sometimes there would be real bad accidents.
Yeah. Sometimes the 4-horse hitches weren't used to riding together. The 4-horse chariot hitches, so they would take 2 ponies that were used to riding together with another 2 ponies that were used to riding together, but the 4 of them weren't used to running together, and sometimes they would get tangled up in the harness and stuff, and it was not good. Kind of dangerous with that. But the chariots were made out of a 55-gallon drum, and they would cut the back off, so you'd have about 3/4 of the drum. Then you would be standing on the bottom that was cut out, and they would put axles on it with wheels, and then put a tongue out. And her dad was really good at making chariots, and then they would paint them. They'd be real fancy. They'd paint them so they looked really nice, and then they would race those at the horse races.
And sometimes they even went to other counties. And one time Dad and his friend were going to go to to the county fair in Spencer, and their rules were that they had to wear capes. And so my mom and the other guy's wife worked at making capes. They weren't real keen on having to wear that, but they did it because they wanted to race and they thought their teams would do good. They got there, and none of the other guys that were in the race were willing to wear the capes, so they didn't wear them either. So that was all for naught. But anyway, they enjoyed doing that. Let me see. I think whenever they got through with their trail rides, then Lee's mom would have a lunch ready, or if it was at our place, we'd have a lunch ready, and the members would sign up. You know, it was just once a month that they would do this, and so everybody would sign up. Well, I'll take this month and do the lunch this month, and so on and so on. And then I think they always had a Christmas party too. And then that was the last get together that we would have, till the next spring when it would all start again.
But we had once in a while we'd have a few accidents. Somebody would fall off a horse, or that they would be clowning around on horses and jumping over logs and that type of thing. We've had a few guys that would fall off, and one of them hurt his shoulder really bad. But we had that. And one time we were at a farmhouse in the farmyard, and my horse got tangled up in some barbed wire. And I got off my horse to get the wire untangled from its feet, and my horse spooked, and I couldn't hang on to my horse, and my horse took off, and that wire drug that barbed wire behind, and that wire come around and whipped the back of my legs, and I still have scars on the very back of my legs where that wire cut on my legs, and it was pretty deep. But that was a time that I had an accident with my horse. I just couldn't hang on to her. She took off, and she was scared. And we got the barbed wire untangled from her feet, and got my legs bandaged up, and we went on.
My dad often rode a horse that was named Cody, a big Palomino horse. But one time we had spring flood waters, and my dad had to go get the cattle out of the area that was going to flood. And so the horse had to swim in the water, and it got the water in its eyes, and there was something in the water. It caused the horse to go blind. So it made my dad feel so bad, so sad. But it was a smart horse. When he'd run out of water, he'd pick up his water bucket and shake it. And we had to get a special hook on the gate because it knew how to open the gate to get out too. So Dad really felt bad about that horse going blind.
So that's I told you we had all kinds of horses. We had even a man that rode a mule. He had mules, and they were trained to jump fences because they used them to hunt coon in the timbers. And so they would come to a fence, and they'd have to jump over the fence. Well, when they would lay a gunny sack over the fence, the mule knew that he could jump over that fence, or thought he could, and he did. But we had a guy that rode the mule, and every once in a while, if we would come up to a fence or something, he would show off and put his gunny sack over the barbed wire fence, and the mule would jump over it. So it was kind of funny, and kind of a lot of fun to watch that. So, but that's about it for the trail rides and the horse shows that I could think of. But we had a good time. Like I say, it was a good family time, and
it was usually always on Sunday
afternoon.
But we always still made it to church.
Right.
So, but it was nice to have something fun to do like that for the family.
Yep. So I had a pair of chariot ponies, and I intended to run them, but I never made it. I did practice with them a couple times on the track at Allison, Iowa, where they had the horse track there, but I had to sell them because we got married.
And he used the money that
And I used the money to buy her ring.
So maybe you kids remember when we used to say, "Oh, your mom and dad are so old that dad had to sell his horses to buy mom's ring." I remember you kids would say, "Oh yeah, right, mom and dad."
But that was the last time. I used to ride horses all the time when I was younger. And like I told you, my dad raised horses, Arabian horses, and did a lot of shows, showing horses. So we did a lot with our horses. We didn't do any farm work with them, but we just rode them for pleasure and showed them for pleasure. But when I sold my chariot ponies, got rid of my other horses, and that was the last time I ever rode a horse. I haven't been on a horse since we've been married. Don't know if I could get on one. But we had a lot of good time, a lot of fun with them. So, anything else you want to share? Is that it?
I can't think of anything right now.
Okay, so that's our trail rides and our horse shows and those times that we had with our horses. You want to share with our track or not yet?
Oh, maybe we'll do that another time.
Okay, so yeah, we'll share our other.
I got one other idea.
Yeah.
When I was younger, we used to have a horse named Sugar, and my aunt Joan started, I think, giving him blocks of sugar, and he was black with a white blaze, and so that was kind of my first memory of the horse. And then we also had a bay horse that all 5 of us kids could crawl up. He'd put his head down and we'd crawl up his neck and we could all get up on him. So I rode then. And then I rode when Grandpa would come and visit me for our dates on Sunday afternoon. Did you mention that already?
No,
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then his family lived southwest of town and our family lived northeast of town. So we were probably
6 miles.
maybe 6 miles apart. So he would ride his horse over on Sunday afternoon and visit me. And that was fun. Then I would go riding because my brothers weren't around to spook the horse. He didn't do that to me.
Right. Okay.
So, and then another thing, honey.
Another thing, okay.
That had to do with horses.
Yeah.
When we went on our honeymoon, we went to the National Cowboy Hall of Fame.
National Final Rodeo.
And then when we got there, we didn't realize it, but the National Final Rodeo was going on and Grandpa was so excited. So we kind of started out with horses in our beginning, but we didn't have them.
Right. Right.
So I think that's all I can think of now. All right.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, and hope you enjoyed this. If you have any other comments on anything you want to hear about our lives, what we did as kids or whatever, just let us know, and we'll try to do a video on it. So have a good time, and we'll see you. Bye.
Bye-bye.